Good morning and evening to everyone. Welcome to the APRU 25th Annual President's Meeting. During the meeting, you will all be muted. Well, we will invite you to unmute yourself when it's your turn to speak. So after you speak, please mute yourself back. Last but not the least, just a reminder, this meeting will be recorded. So to kick off today's meeting, it is my honor to introduce our host for the day, UCLA's Chancellor Jean Block, APRU Chair. Chancellor Jean, the stage is yours.
Good morning, good afternoon for some of you, I believe, and good evening. There are very few organizations that can say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening at the same time. So it says something great about this organization. I want to extend my very warm welcome to all the APRU presidents and colleagues joining our annual presidents meeting. Thank you for taking your time for being here. We know that many of you have been living on Zoom now for 18 months, and it requires quite a bit of commitment, and we deeply appreciate you participating in this meeting today. This year, we have participants from 57 universities from around the Asia Pacific. So one thing about virtual meetings, they're actually very well attended, and it's really a heartfelt appreciation for so many people being here. But of course, due to the lingering pandemic, we were unable to meet in person as planned. And I know that all of us were looking forward to getting together at Nanyang Technological University in Singapore to help them celebrate their 30th anniversary. So it was sad that we couldn't do that, but my sincere gratitude to President Subra Suresh and his team for the efforts they put into preparing for this year's meeting. The good word is that we will be visiting NTU. We'll be doing it 2 years from now and at APM 2023, and we'll get a chance to, I guess, celebrate their 32nd anniversary with them. So at this year's virtual meeting, we're enhancing the participant experience with a meeting portal that offers one-stop access to join our sessions, visit the resource gallery, and connect with colleagues around the world. So I hope you'll take advantage of these features. We're actually trying to make Zoom more and more friendly and functional, and I think we're making progress in making it a better remote platform, and hopefully one that we'll be able to use to supplement what I hope will be in-person meetings in certainly for the next meeting. Now, as we've done in previous years, I'd like to particularly welcome 5 of our newest members to the APRU family. And I'd like to offer them a minute and a half or so. We have to keep this short. It's going to be a long meeting, so that new members can introduce themselves and their universities. So the first president that I would like to introduce is President Han from the Harbin Institute of Technology. President Han.
Okay. Good morning and good afternoon, Chair Brock, Secretary General Chimivan, dear colleagues. On behalf of Harbin Institute of Technology, it's my honor to join in APRU. HIT was founded in 1920. Now, it's a national key comprehensive research university where science and engineering are at its core. HIT has 3 campuses in the city of Harbin, Weihai, and Shenzhen. In the latest US News Best Global Universities for Engineering, HIT ranks number 4. Since its beginning, HIT has always valued the international cooperation. We are willing to share experiences and working with all members and make the new normal together. At last, I wish the meeting a complete success. Thank you.
Thank you, President Han. And the next president I'd like to introduce is President Ishibashi from Kyushu University. President Ishibashi.
Good afternoon. I'm Tatsuro Ishibashi. It's a great pleasure to offer a few words today on the occasion of this annual president meeting. I am an ophthalmologist. My experience abroad as a research fellow at the University of Southern California, Doheny Eye Institute, influenced me significantly and motivated me to pursue my research and to contribute to our institute, Kyushu University. Kyushu University is one of the leading research-oriented national universities in Japan, with about 19,000 students, including over 2,300 international students. Our campuses are located in Fukuoka, the south of Japan. We are committed to address grand challenges, especially on climate change and energy-related issues. Particularly, low carbon and negative emission technologies are one of our research excellence, and we are keen to provide opportunities for sharing our expertise and creating dialogue for the APRU network on tackling 21st century challenges together. I'm looking forward to a successful collaboration with all of you, and I hope you will be able to visit our brand new campus in the near future. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, President Yoshibashi. The next president I'd like to introduce is President and Vice Chancellor Johnson from Simon Fraser University.
Well, thank you ever so much, Chancellor Block. It is an honor to join you today. Good evening and good morning to everyone. I want to begin by acknowledging that I am speaking to you today from the beautiful unceded territories of the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh peoples. And it's really an honor to be joining you. As was indicated, my name is Joy Johnson, and I'm the president of Simon Fraser University. It really is a pleasure to be joining APRU's newest, as one of APRU's newest member institution. Simon Fraser University has a historic and continuing connections to the Pacific Rim region. We're proud of our strong and productive relations with our Pacific Rim partners, many of which are APRU members. SFU is a relatively young and vibrant institution that has established itself as one of Canada's best comprehensive, most community engaged, and a top research intensive university in just over 5 decades. As Canada's engaged university, SFU shares APRU's commitments to address our region's most pressing challenges. Just this year, we were recognized for our commitment to sustainability in the Times Higher Education Impact Ranking, where we placed in the top 50 globally and top 10 for sustainable cities and climate action. I really am looking forward to working collaboratively with APRU and its members as we shape the new normal. Thank you so much.
Thank you, President Vice Chancellor Johnson. Appreciate it. I'd like to recognize now President Low of Sun Yat-sen University, but I believe the presentation will be given by Su-Hang Pang, who will be speaking for Sun Yat-sen University.
Good morning, President Jim Block, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Hai-Peng Xiao, Executive Vice President of Sun Yat-sen University. On behalf of President Luo Jun, I would like to express my gratitude to APRU for the kind invitation. I'm very much honored to become one of the APRU members. Sun Yat-sen University was founded in 1924 by Dr. Sun Yat-sen, Democratic Father of China. The university is located in Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau, Greater Bay Area. It has outstanding comprehensive strength, contributed by 5 campuses in 3 cities of Guangzhou, Zhuhai, and Shenzhen, and with the second largest healthcare center, 10 affiliated hospitals. We stand ready to intensify the cooperation and exchange with APRU members in post-pandemic era, and will be actively engaged in the platforms and events set up by APRU. Together, we are going to help spur global recovery and shore up solidarity within the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Shou. Appreciate it. And now I'd like to recognize President Chen of Tongji University, but I believe the presentation is going to be given by Professor Low, who is the Vice President for International. Professor Low.
Thank you, Chancellor Block. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. As Chancellor Block introduced, that our president is on unexpected travel, so that's the reason I'm here. And it's a great pleasure for Tongji University to join APRU. And we really appreciate this opportunity to have more, dialogue and collaboration with all of you. For Tongji University, I think that I like to highlight three main features. The first is that Tongji University has 114 years of history, and it's located in Shanghai as one of the first national university of China. The second is that in the 114 years of history of Tongji University, and Tongji always connect its education, research, and social service with the real-world challenges. So that's in the past, especially during the rapid urbanization of China, and Tongji has contribute to that part of the history tremendously, and also as a result, our civil engineering, urban planning, architecture, design, actually they are now among the best in China. But now the world is changing rapidly, and we are now facing new challenges. And recently, in the recent years, and Tongji also set up a kind of strategy. We focus on developing artificial intelligence, life science and engineering, environmental science and engineering, and design. And it become a kind of emerging program, the leading program at Tongji. The third is that Tongji is a very international university, and we partnership with 280 international partners. And we established 12 international platforms, including Sino-German, Sino-France, Sino-Italian, etc., etc. So I think that now we are in a very challenging point of COVID-19. I think that it's really urgent that we can work together to develop some know-how for a possible new and better world. So really appreciate that to be a part of our APRU network. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Liu. And thank you all. Your participation strengthens the work of APRU. We now have a network of 60 research universities across the region, really dotted across the Pacific Rim. So good increasing coverage for an important area in the world. So to enable all of you to get to know the new members better, we've included more information about each of them in the resource gallery. So please take a look at that when you have some time. We also have a number of new presidents, not new member institutions, but new presidents who joined APRU since last year. So I'll just mention some of our new presidents. One is Acting President Koshel from Far Eastern Federal University, President Lee from Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology, President Ito from Keio University, Vice Chancellor and President Terry from the University of Queensland, Vice Chancellor and Principal Scott from the University of Sydney, Rector Quiroga from Universidad de San Francisco de Quito, Vice Chancellor Shukor from the University of Malaya. So I want to welcome all of our new presidents, and we hope you'll get deeply involved in this organization, and we look forward to meeting you in our real three-dimensional in-person meeting this coming year. So now we'll move on to our APRU, the APRU report. And I'll start off with just some observations for the year. So as many of you likely experienced, the COVID-19 crisis and the disruptions to international travel have really upended global higher education landscape. We have great difficulty now with our international students getting to the US. We have, for example, for our institution, study abroad has really been discontinued, virtual, except for virtual study abroad, which is a wonderful program which APRU has been hosting. It's been very, very difficult this year. Yet APRU remains vigilant. We're taking proactive approaches to support our members' needs and to address global challenges with resilience, compassion, and creativity. So APRU has not remained dormant during all this activity. It simply switched its modality for communication. In collaboration with members and partners, we've embraced opportunities to interact remotely and lead initiatives ranging from setting international higher education policy to launching a virtual student exchanges and mentoring, which I'm very proud of the Chinese University of Hong Kong. President Tuan has really brought this to us, to assisting with public health crisis management. So the association has been quite active. APRU's 2021 annual report titled Responding to Crisis, Shaping the New Normal will give you a detailed account of the remarkable things we achieved together last year and the many exciting initiatives that are in the pipeline. You should have received a copy, and I hope you get a chance to read it. It's really quite an interesting document. I'd also like to express my gratitude to all APRU presidents for their steadfast support of the network in this past year of upheaval and uncertainties. There's been so much that our institutions have been dealing with. Sometimes it's easy to forget about your other relationships when you're just trying to literally keep the doors open to your institution and maintain some reasonable level of educational excellence. So deeply appreciative that you stayed involved. I'm indebted particularly to the presidents who serve on the steering committee for their leadership and guidance. But my appreciation also goes to all APRU faculty, administrators, and students whose efforts and dedication underpin our success, and our partners worldwide for their support. So everyone really has gotten in line to help, and that has made a huge difference. So now I'd like to turn the program over to APRU's Secretary General, Christopher Tremowan, who will tell you more about what the network has achieved this past year. So Chris, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Gene. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining this annual President's meeting. It's really great to see so many of you here today on this call. I want to reinforce Chancellor Bloch's thanks to the steering committee members and also express our thanks to him personally for leading the network so successfully through this stressful period. And we're grateful for the engagement and support of all our members over the past 18 months. It's been such a difficult, uncertain time, yet we've achieved a lot together. With the pandemic and the global climate crisis, it's even more important to work together, building relationships of trust and cooperation. We know there will not be a return to the previous normal. So the APRU Steering Committee has therefore agreed 3 priorities for our collective action over the next year. The first, providing a neutral platform for high-level policy dialogue and cooperation. We're doing this already, but we aim to focus more on this. Second, advancing action on climate change and the role of research universities in reaching zero carbon goals, and that's already been mentioned by one of our new members. And not least, combating inequality and racism, promoting diversity and inclusion, empowering women and minorities. So you can expect some major new initiatives in the coming year, as well as activities building on our current work. Looking at what we've achieved this year, as Chancellor Bloch mentioned, you've already received the link to our annual report. And here on the screen is the QR code and the link again. This report is presented in a new way, more graphically, with links to where you can get more detailed information. And we're also producing a Chinese version, which will be published soon. Just quickly, here is an overview of the contents. The first section is called Working Together, and it records who we are and how we work, plus our partners, including international organizations, business and media. The second section is on Actions and Impact, and this section gives a high-level summary of what we've done and who was involved. And the third, Future Initiatives, sets out some new work, new initiatives, plus APRU at a glance, which is a handy summary of all our activities. So it's now my pleasure to share a video in which some presidents and other colleagues report on what we've done this year. APRU is moving into a new phase of its life. We're providing new opportunities for students and faculty to shape this future. And we're targeting what really matters, like climate change, inequality, and racism. To make sure we connect, at our home base in Hong Kong, we've just opened the International University Centre at Cyberport. Members and partners are welcome to share our modern, flexible workspace in this innovative IT hub. Here, there's high-tech facilities and 1,500 startup companies. To connect to the life science innovation community, we also have a satellite office at the Science and Technology Park. Now let's take a look at what we've achieved and some exciting new initiatives.
Being a member of APRU provides an opportunity to collectively harness our international ties to support students, to provide emergency assistance, and advance commonly held best practices, just like the APRU Global Health Conference in October 2020. It was inspiring to have Dr. Margaret Chen and Professor Alejandro Gaviria share their insights on the evolving roles of people in academia.
In academia, we have a double responsibility. One is to generate knowledge, but the other one is to participate intensely in public debates.
And when meeting physically is not feasible, APRU remains agile to connect members and different partners. For example, APRU has partnered with Google and the UNESCAP on the AI for Social Good project, which involved academics, policymakers, and industry leaders.
The partnership itself focuses on developing cutting-edge research and policy advice on artificial intelligence for sustainable development and converting them into concrete recommendations to be used by policymaking and enabling them.
Along with these two events, Times Higher Education Innovation and Impact Summit held in April 2021 and Teaching in Virtual Environment webinar series are also not to be missed. All in all, we've held a total of 52 activities in the past year, sharing insights from 290 experts and scholars, connecting with 9,330 attendants from 53 economies across the Pacific Rim and beyond, and setting our highest record.
APRU also remains committed to supporting its students and leaders through what has been an extremely challenging time. For example, toward the end of this past year, we hosted the Asia Pacific Women in Leadership Mentoring Program.
It's not just one-way traffic, but it's really a journey of sharing our experiences and learning the ups and downs and to be really in tune in the different phases of our lives and to be able to support each other as we journey through this.
We have also further developed our virtual student exchange program. This innovative initiative provides students with opportunities to experience rich cultural immersion, to network with their fellow students, and to take rigorous academic courses, all without the need to travel.
I'm very pleased to report that between last year, September 2020, and March 2021 this year, so as of last month, we have actually developed 42 co-curricular programs. They all offered by 13 universities and with over 900 student participation. So this is a very, very encouraging figure.
Along with the Esports Fellowship Program, we also held the inaugural Metagame Conference at Cyberport Hong Kong last December, Quarantune's student music competition, and the virtual global health case competition. Until now, we have produced over 11,000 hours of content, which garnered more than 7,000 students across 20 economies coming from 47 universities.
During the past year, APRU has extended its reach and public awareness of its activities through a variety of media coverage, totaling more than 490 news stories, reaching 500 million unique readers per month. APRU has also seen over 4 million social media impressions, enhancing the profile of the organisation and its members. Moving forward, we will further advance international excellence in education, research and innovation through presidential dialogues, joint statements, and research collaborations.
The biggest value of APRU lies in being the ultimate superconnector for all our members and providing a neutral platform for global solutions in a diverse region. We'll continue to maximize the network effects by partnering with governments, international organizations, industry, and local communities on solutions to Pacific Rim challenges.
Last, but certainly not least, we aim to build interdisciplinary platforms for collaboration on emerging global issues. We know partnerships across borders and sectors are essential to solving some of our most pressing challenges. Thank you very much for your support in such an unusual year. Let's keep up the good work and continue to shape the future together.
I hope the video gave you a sense of our achievements together, and thanks to all of you who starred in it. We will spend the remaining time of this meeting looking ahead, understanding the challenges that presidents, faculty, and students face, and what they mean for our future actions together. But first, it's now time for a group photo. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. So right now, we would like to invite everyone to please turn on your camera and then look straight to your screen and then just give us a big smile. And then our colleagues here will be taking pictures of everyone virtually. Okay, I see people are smiling. Just keep on smiling. Right, cool. Great. Just keep on smiling. Hope everyone is doing well. Right. Okay, we still need one or two more, so keep on smiling. Wow, I see everyone is looking so fresh and nice. Great, thank you so much everyone for joining us for this group photo. You can keep your cameras on so we can see all your pretty and handsome faces. So right now, I would like to pass the time back to Chancellor Jean Block. Okay, have a bit of a tech. Okay, here, we're back. Thank you.
Welcome, thank you. And so we now come to the third part of our meeting, the Presidential Forum, which this year we've titled Shaping the New Normal in Higher Education. So let me just start off the forum with a few observations. So, we each have a critical role to play in shaping what the new normal will look like in higher education. And the past year and a half has certainly taught us a lot about resilience, but it's also given us opportunities and responsibility to innovate. Much like your universities at UCLA, professors who had only taught in classrooms honed virtual class offerings and began experimenting with new ways to teach classes. And some became very good at this and very innovative in remote education. Our administrators learned that much of our workforce could operate successfully remotely. Surprisingly, we found that not only were our employees happier sometimes working at home, their managers thought they were very effective working at home, really upended our conventional thinking about working from home. And we recognize that the new world that will emerge after the pandemic may have different patterns of work. I mean, so the new future for work may look very different. So we had an opportunity at UCLA, and I think many of your institutions, to take advantage of all this remote learning to reach out beyond our current students to our graduates, our alumni, and recognizing that we can actually have a larger tent. We can reach many more students and former students than we've thought was possible before. And those of us that have health systems have realized the attractiveness of telemedicine and teletherapy. And long after we've returned to office visits, many people continue to prefer having their appointments when possible remote. So again, it's actually beginning to really revolutionize the way we deliver healthcare. So I'm looking forward to hearing from the presidents today in their different regions and share their insights, concerns, and opportunities for higher ed's post-pandemic future. We are hopefully coming out of this pandemic, and we have a lot of lessons learned. Some of those lessons are common to all of us, but some of us has really been dependent on how the pandemic has played out in our individual economies and what our experiences are. We hope that some of the questions that we'll address today are, for example, how universities are reshaping their campus communities and responding to the challenges they face, sort of a broad question. What are universities' broader responsibilities for global society? Has that changed? How individuals look to our universities? And specifically, of course, for this organization, how can APRU contribute as a network? Are there things that we can do collectively around the Pacific Rim that we can't do individually, or we can't even do with small groups of universities? There's something very special about having a larger network. So after we hear from our panelists for about 5 minutes, so we have to be careful here because I'm only given an hour, and I have to be strictly make sure we get done in 1 hour. So we have about 5 minutes per presentation. That will give us about 25 minutes for a general discussion with the group. So that would be ideal. So first, we'll hear from President Lin Shongjin from Shanghai Jiaotong University. So President Lin has served as vice president, executive vice president of SJTU before becoming the 41st president in 2017. He's led more than 40 major projects sponsored by the National 973 program, 863 program, the National Science Foundation of China, as well as industry projects. He received his bachelor's degree in engineering and a PhD in ship structural mechanics from SJTU. So President Lin, please.
Dear friends and colleagues, good morning and good evening. The pandemic has transformed almost every aspect of our lives. The way we work, we teach, the way we socialize and connect. It has created both challenge and opportunity for us to transform higher education. It is my great pleasure and honor to share some thoughts and ideas with colleagues across the network about those mentioned above. I understand that some of you may have been working and teaching from home for months, and some may be even tired of talking about teaching, collaboration online. On the one hand, technology has made it possible to sustain and increase accessibility of higher education in the pandemic. On the other hand, the quality of education and the quality of online teaching remain untouched as it was unless we take pains and address it. It leads to the ultimate question of what makes good teaching. That is the million-dollar question. And SJTU has recently launched a school of education in the hope of answering the question. I believe each university approach the question in its own way, but I'm raising it today in the hope that we could leverage the APRU platform and transform what we are doing every day. How should we prepare the next generation of students for a more complex and ever-changing world? I believe all universities agree that no pressing issue of the world and the climate change, global health, or the pandemic can be solved without international cooperation. But have we trained our students enough to cooperate? We have had double degree program, joint research projects, students exchange program with international partner. Last year, the virtual students exchange program was launched across APRU. Global competence is at the heart of every exchange experience, remotely or on the spot. In all these activities, we hope our students
will learn to understand and appreciate different values and beliefs, interact and connect appropriately with people from different backgrounds and take difficulty issue in the collaboration with professionals across different cultures. With this in mind, I thought that APRU provides a perfect platform for us to design projects to bring in teachers and students from diverse areas of study and different culture so that they can work together at the common platform such as UN SDGs. The projects we have been thinking of will be students focusing on the across culture and across discipline teamwork. It can be delivered face-to-face or online depending on the new normal situation. We have had many bilateral projects and activities in the past, but can we have multilateral ones to include universities from at least 3 countries and make it more global? In this way, we are making our life hard rather than easy, but it will be worth it. In this light, SGTU will launch its own UN SDGs summer school and would be more than happy to collaborate and co-design projects with colleges from across and network and in any possible and feasible ways. The projects will be open to all APRU students. If they wish to participate, we can make the APRU SDGs summer school if you will. We hope that through such collaborative initiative on the platform, university could support young people to develop much needed global competence, help maintain international peace, and promote well-being for all. Thank you.
Thank you, President Lean. And unfortunately, I know that President Lean had to catch a flight, so he will not be around for a questions and answer session, but I appreciate him giving us his presentation. So next we'll hear from Vice Chancellor and President Margaret Gardner from Monash University. President Gardner has held this role since September 2014. She's had extensive academic experience, having held various leadership positions in Australian universities throughout her career, including serving as Vice Chancellor and President of Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology from 2005 to 2014. She attained a first-class honors degree in economics and a PhD from the University of Sydney, was a Fulbright postdoctoral fellow, spending time at MIT, Cornell University, and UC Berkeley. In 2018, she was elected a fellow of the Academy of Social Sciences in Australia. President Gardner.
Thank you, Chancellor Block. And can I say how thrilled I am to be here again, even though we are all in virtual format. Let me say briefly a few things and let me address my comments principally to reshaping campus communities. There's much that could be said about research and education more broadly, but that is what I want to speak about. And I want to frame it in this way. You talk about the normal post-pandemic. In fact, I think what we are experiencing, particularly here in the Asia Pacific, is that we are understanding what it is like living with the pandemic. We are dealing in a globe where the world is moving at different paces through the experience with this pandemic. And so it is not so much a case of we have had a crisis and what will it look like when we come out, but what have we learned about the resilience and responsiveness of how we work in education and in our campus communities, given that this pandemic is not over and that there is no reason to expect that these sorts of challenges will not continue to be before us. So let me first mention APRU as a really interesting example. At present, Monash's Sustainable Development Institute, which by its title you can understand what it's focused on, is working with APRU and providing a student global climate change simulation. And students from across the Asia Pacific are engaged in a program about what it's like to be a delegate in the UN climate change negotiations. Now, in fact, what has happened is not that we couldn't do these things virtually before, but now they are more comfortable. And so we are bringing together larger groups of students in these large-scale simulations. And that is doing two things. First, they are not only simulating what it's like to deal with what is a major global challenge and to be responsible for carving solutions. They are determining their pledges, then they're modelling what the outcomes of those pledges would be. And in that, this is virtually the type of real life experience that we expect gives richer experience to our students. So we've learnt something about how a rich experience can be virtual, not just on campus. The other thing we're doing in reshaping our campus communities is understanding that we can be forced by circumstance to be delivering education across the world, but we have learnt to build relations with other institutions, in our case, to build study hubs in other places, so that what we're scaffolding in a face-to-face experience for education is actually the broader experience, the support for people's engagement, their mental health, their well-being, and delivering that face-to-face at dispersed locations through study hubs, rather than focusing on the face-to-face being the teaching in what we call the conventional teaching. And so Monash has got study hubs now across China, and working with some of our partners, which we're very grateful. Also in Vietnam, we are prevented from having study hubs in some places where we'd like by the action of the pandemic, for example, in Malaysia and Indonesia. But what we're learning is the combination of online and face-to-face can be different from what we expected. And the face-to-face experience can be the social experience that complements the more traditional or formal learning, and that we can get very rich experience for students in what I'd call real life, but through virtual simulations. And I thank APRU for the work that we've been able to do in allowing a very broad range of students to experience what it's like to actually be part of a climate change negotiation, so that not only are they building their understandings of how we deal with that global challenge of climate change, but how we are contributing through that engagement to greater geopolitical security. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, delay here to get off mute. So thank you, President Gardner. And now I'd like to turn to President Subras Suresh from Nanyang Technological University in Singapore. So President Suresh began his tenure as president in January of 2018, and he was previously president of Carnegie Mellon University. He was director of the US National Science Foundation and dean of MIT School of Engineering, where he was a faculty member for 2 decades. A scientist, engineer, and entrepreneur, he's elected member of all 3 branches of the US National Academy of Sciences, quite remarkable, as well as the American Academy of Sciences and the National Academy of Inventors. A high school graduate at the age of 15, he completed his doctorate degree from MIT in 2 years. Also quite impressive. So President Suresh, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chancellor Block. Good morning, everyone. Good day, everyone. It's a pleasure to join you, and I very much look forward to welcoming all of you to NTU in 2023 for the annual President's Meeting. In the brief time that I have, I would like to focus my comments on 3 broad topics. First is some of the lessons learned from the global pandemic in the last 18 months from a global perspective. First and foremost, we have realized that universities have a very important role to play at a time of global distress with respect to creating new knowledge, creating solutions to global problems such as development of vaccines or diagnostic tools, and also advising governments and policymakers around the globe. The second lesson we learned is technology such as Zoom, for example, has connected the world in a way that physical contact, at a time when physical contact could not happen, physical face-to-face meetings could not happen. At the same time, while globalization has been accelerated because of technology, we have gone in the opposite direction because of other factors. The pandemic has prevented us from getting together. It has made life difficult for students all over the world. And also geopolitical factors and technology tensions have gone in the opposite direction of globalization. The third point is the universities' roles have been very well recognized now, and they are in a very different place compared to even industry and government. So what has NTU done during the past few years? Fortunately for us, even before we knew there was going to be a pandemic, we had invested a lot of resources into digitization and technology. So when we had to move more than 600 courses to online within less than a week, we were prepared for it, not because we knew there was going to be a pandemic, but just because of good luck. And the investments we made in infrastructure stood us well. The pandemic is not over. Our challenge is not over. It continues to be quite severe. That has also forced us in our 5-year strategic plan to focus on things which would have taken much longer conversation in normal times, in more normal times. For example, in our 5-year strategic plan, which was just rolled out earlier this year, there is a much greater emphasis on global challenges and what the university will do compared to previous strategic plans at the university. Our faculty and staff, during the conversation with the approval of the Board of Trustees, have focused on 4 global challenges: humans and their relationship with the environment, the science, art, and technology of learning, the 4th industrial revolution and humanity's role, not the field of humanities, but the role of humanity in interfacing with technology. And last but not least, aging, physical and mental well-being, and maximizing the human potential. These are also very well aligned with the 5-year R&D plan of the government of Singapore. Now, how do universities respond to this? So we have addressed it in our own way. We are very fortunate to have a very large campus, which is also not only one of the most beautiful, but one of the most modern campuses in the world. 97% of our buildings are already Green Mark Platinum certified. So in the next 5 years, we have set a very ambitious goal for us. We'll convert the entire campus into a Platinum campus. That's goal number 1. Goal number 2, in the next 5 years, we will reduce the net energy use, net water consumption, net waste generation by 50% compared to the baseline level of 2011. And we are 30% of the way through already. In the next 5 years, our goal is to do everything possible to achieve that. If we do that, our next target is net zero. So we want to walk the walk of sustainability conversation. Students, faculty, staff, trustees, everybody will be engaged in this, and we're putting a lot of resources into this. Let me just conclude with one other effort that NTU is participating in with several of our colleagues. The World Economic Forum last year during the pandemic established something called the Future Council on Scientific Collaboration. I co-chair that council along with Dr. Fabiola Giannotti, who is the Director General of CERN in Geneva, Switzerland. And the council will complete its work next year. We have several NTU faculty and staff engaged in this to prepare a report that looks at global scientific collaboration specifically targeted at universities. I very much hope that we can bring that report to APRU when the report is completed next year, have conversations with our APRU colleagues so that some of those recommendations could become points of partnership in the future. The work is not completed yet, but I very much look forward to bringing it to your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Suresh. So next we have President Moo-Hwan Kim from Postech, the Pohang University of Science and Technology. President Kim began his tenure in September 2019, but his ties with Postech began more than 30 years ago when he joined the Department of Mechanical Engineering faculty. Among his leadership roles there, he served as Vice President of Planning and Vice President of Student Affairs and Admissions. He earned his bachelor's and master's degree in nuclear engineering at Seoul National University and a PhD at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. In 2020, he was selected as a member of the National Academy of Engineering of Korea, at the nation's premier academic institute for engineering. President Kim.
Thank you, Chancellor Block, for your kind introductions, and the APRU President, and the Secretary General Tremewan, and all participants. It is my great honor and pleasure to join this presidential forum with the respected President and the delegates. Today, I would like to give a short presentation titled "The University into the Virtual World" and suggest ways for APRU to work together with and after COVID-19. Next slide, please. As you know, before COVID-19, in-person, local, and individual research have been tradition of our universities. But after the pandemics, zero contact, worldwide, and open innovation have become new normals. Under this challenging situation of the pandemic and under any circumstances, I believe that it is our mission to pursue happiness and the growth of all individuals in our campus communities. For these missions, our campus boundary has expanded to the virtual world beyond time and space, and the international collaborations will be more important in this situation and futures. Now, I would like to share with you how Postech has been reshaping our campus into the virtual world. Next slide, please. Last year, Postech switched the 2021 undergraduate admission process into a completed online procedure. Through this contactless interview, and the no-show rate was lower than the previous years, and the candidates were very satisfied with the remote admission process. Also, Postech allowed our students to conduct a scientific experiment at home using VR and AR technologies by providing all undergraduate freshmen with VR device and experimental kits. Thanks to these efforts, they were able to attend the virtual physics class. Next slide, please. Without flying to another country, our students can now take online lectures by distinguished scholars in the virtual space. Also, Postech has joined the Digital Egypt Builder Initiative to educate future IT experts in Egypt, and we are expected to offer a completely online professional master's degree program in AI and data science next year. APRU Virtual Student Exchange Program has been a wonderful platform, and I would like to say thank you to President Rocky Tuan of the Chinese University of Hong Kong for your leadership in these difficult situations. On top of these student programs, we had virtually invited talks with the Belgian scholars to celebrate the diplomatic relationship between Korea and Belgium based on the researchers network. And thanks to the leadership of the President Hong Ho-Chian of National Tsinghua University, we had our first university level online research conference with NTHU just last week. Professors from the materials science and engineering department of both universities are now advising dual PhD students virtually for their research collaboration. Next slide, please. One more, in addition, student events also went into the virtual world. And in 2020, we had a post-tech cyber science world. Unlike the previous years, the baseball, soccer, and the basketball matches were canceled, but instead, we had virtual matches like the AI programming, hacking, science quiz, and esports games. Last year, we had an event online victory celebration with our students. Next slide, please. So now I would like to suggest 2 items. Maybe we can suggest more and more, but I'd like to emphasize 2 for future APRU cooperation. As I said last slide, I mentioned esports. Nowadays, I'm thinking about how we can extend that one. Using esports as a platform for APRU students is my first suggestion, so that they can play together, they can enjoy together. Postec is building a new esports bar, as you shown in the pictures, on campus, where students can eat, drink, and enjoy esports together. Maybe you can imagine the American sports bar, American sports pub. As you can see from the second drawings, it looks like the amphitheaters, and we would like to connect more than 50,000 people virtually through our esports bar with other universities. That is why we named this bar as a Colosseum. They gathered more than 50,000 people very long time ago. Postec is now preparing for joint program with the Korean universities. And really, I hope to extend our esports initiative with the APRU communities for sharing friendship online and letting them, our students, enjoy Friday night together with drinking of beers. Next slide, please. Second, I would like to suggest a sharing campus program between the APRU universities. Sharing campus means that the students will stay at other universities, APRU other university campus, by living in each dormitory and using campus facilities of the host university. In this program, during staying, for example, students are expected to take the language class at the host university and enjoy their life, while take the online courses of their own home universities. I believe that sharing campus can be a new model for our students' experience, cultural awareness, and the diversity and the international capabilities from the place where they will stay. Next slide, please. With these suggestions, I hope our APRU students can enjoy their life together, study and research together in any APRU university campus around the world with and after COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you, President Kim. And finally, but last but not least, we have my neighbor from across the city, President Carol Folt from the University of Southern California. And I have to tell a little story that President Folt actually wrote to me a little while ago before she got to the meeting, saying that she was stuck in traffic. And for those of you that have spent time in Los Angeles, you can appreciate fully what President Folt was dealing with when you're trying to get across Los Angeles at the time. So President Folt, we really truly appreciate you were able to make it. So prior to joining USC in 2019, President Folt led the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill from 2013 to 2019 and served in various leadership roles at Dartmouth College, including as interim president, provost, dean of the faculty, and professor of biological sciences. She earned her bachelor's degree in aquatic biology and master's degree in biology from UC Santa Barbara and her doctorate in ecology from UC Davis. She did postdoctoral work at the W.K. Kellogg Biological Station of Michigan State University. President Folt.
Thank you, Chancellor Block. Thank you, Jean. That's one thing about the pandemic. We didn't have traffic a few months ago, but that is all back in Los Angeles. So that's one of the things we wish hadn't come back in the same way. It's great to be here. It's great to see everyone from APRU. It's great to see the presidents and chancellors of all the universities I've attended in my life, also in this conversation. And it's an exciting time. I think what I'm hearing from everyone, all the ideas being shared, are things that I think we're all thinking about. And one thing COVID, I think, has taught us is how much great research universities actually share. And I think we knew it, but it's sort of been doubled down in my own mind. We have shared goals to work collaboratively, but I believe we all see now that there's a chance to do it really on warp speed. We can do it faster. People are willing to do it in ways they haven't done. So we have a real window of opportunity for collaboration right now. We also know that our deep mission to lift the human spirit, to be the places where people can confront great challenges, and to help eliminate some of the disparities that have been made so clear through COVID, disparities in education, in healthcare, in economic gaps, things like that, that our universities in each of our own regions can do, but together we can be a real beacon. I think those become clearer as we come out of this COVID into whatever we'll create as the new normal. It also is a chance for us to lead in sustainability. I know every single person here cares about that, but I believe we need to take that on with the same intensity that we took on COVID-19. There's chances ahead for us to do things we've never done. And data science, methods of teaching and learning, convergence, AI, technology. I mean, we have more people here that are doing things in this area than we can imagine. So our chances of really accelerating our impact have really grown. I'm just going to take a second to talk about a few of the ones that we're doing at USC, because I know we want to get to the point of having everybody have their own questions. But one of the things that we have done is said that we have to remain mission focused. And I think we all do that, but that means we need to keep our centering around our students. And I think if anything, we've learned places where they've been left out. We can do it better. I think we've learned ways to use the online opportunity to actually increase access rather than isolate it. It's forced us to realize we need to have asynchronous teaching. We have so many international students, and if we have better asynchronous teaching, our students can be doing internships at all of your schools while still being actively involved on our campus. We know we have to get better, I believe, with faculty too. I think faculty need to have more opportunities to work outside the classroom in their labs, have better chances to take their work to market, and maybe even have chances to have more fruitful and productive cross-university, cross-continental relationships that bring universities together through that shared research and teaching of our faculty. And it's not just a one-term visit, but it could become part of long consortial agreements. Some already exist, but I think our faculty, as international as they are in their hearts, would like it if we were able to do that more broadly. We have to expand the tent. I know Jean mentioned that and others, but I think what I've seen, and probably everyone has, is that lack of being able to have access to great research universities is something that none of us believe can continue. And we can't do it all ourselves. So it may mean that we need to find 10 partners in different places so that all the APRU has 10 more partners and 10 more partners beyond that, so that we are able to expand the amazing assets of these powerful research universities into other universities that don't have access to that technology and the skills we have. And I think we're starting to get able to do that. I think that's something that we could be a model for. And then finally, I think I've already been had the advantage of seeing some of these partnerships work with APRU. We have a wonderful global health program that we're working with people here. It's in the Institute on Inequalities and Global Health. Health is clearly an area that is top of minds for all of us. And I think the inequalities in the distribution of the vaccine and other things are something that we all deeply care about. So those are issues we want to work on. We also have a wonderful Institute for Cultural and Creative Industries that we share with the group. And I think one of the areas where I see for USC is that thirst for knowledge about the business of media and the creative economy is something that we do very well. But my goodness, the creative economy is not owned by Hollywood anymore. You know, this is a global creative economy, and the chances that we have to work together as we look at the development of media and communications in a newly enhanced global way is very exciting. So, you know, we can take on these challenges. I think we can do remarkable things together. And I'll end with one last thing. 44,000 students started at USC on Monday. And I have never felt so much hope. They're wearing masks. They are a little bit frightened, but I have not seen the gratitude I see in students ever before that I'm seeing right now. And if that even stays a little bit in their hearts, they are ready and raring to go and so grateful that they're back able to work together. It gives you a real feeling that this is going to be worth it if we keep fighting through these challenges. So thank you.
Thank you, President Folt. Thank you to all the speakers. So now we'll open this up for questions. Maybe I'll start off with the first question. I can't really see people, so I think people are just going to have to be helped. I'll have to call on people as I can see them. But for our speakers, you know, I think that we always our universities, their reputation, their images change from time to time. Sometimes we're more popular than other times. Many of us, people are frustrated that their children can't get into the university because it sometimes is very difficult. Do the speakers feel, would they comment on whether they feel the pandemic and the response of the universities during the pandemic has perhaps actually improved the reputation of the university in their communities, or has no impact? Or, you know, is there a sense that things have changed as because universities have played such a critical role in, you know, vaccine discovery and testing and medical care in some cases. So just wondered if any of you would have impressions about that.
Jean, can I share one?
Please.
We think about this a lot, and I mean, I think it's a mixed bag. There are places when there's no trust, but I do think that the research aspect of what we do has really increased people's confidence. And the AAU did do a big survey of how many, I don't remember, tens of thousands of people. And when they asked people what they thought of universities without mentioning research, it wasn't as positive. But when they talked about the research that universities did, it was up in the 70, 80, 90% belief that it's really important. So when they understand what we're doing, I think they feel more confident. I think there are other things we do that they just don't understand.
Other parts of the world?
Yeah, Jean, to your point, first of all, I echo Carol's comment. From Singapore, I think there are a few aspects I want to highlight. One is, I think, the role of universities is even more appreciated at the policy level and the societal level on the one hand. But there are continuing challenges for all of us around the world with respect to individual circumstances and our ability to accommodate individual requests when we have tens of thousands of students on our campus. I think that challenge is going to continue to grow. One of my other concerns, I think, and the pandemic hasn't quite erased it for us, is while science has delivered the results, there is still a continuing and lingering mistrust and distrust of science in the society, whether it's vaccine hesitation or anything else. And it's all over the world, not specific to any particular region. What can universities do to address that will be another issue for all of us.
Thank you.
Chancellor Block, if I could, Margaret Gardner from Monash, I would also echo what my two colleagues have just said, that certainly the survey research from Australia says that the impact, particularly medical and health research, which always has very high resonance in the population, is seen as really positive. The challenge is making people connect that with the university and the university as a context. It's certainly also true, reflecting on what has been said, that the students' response to being back on campus on the few occasions, I must say in our case when we've been able to do it, has been a level of engagement, massive increase in engagement in everything, not just learning, turning up to seminars, being engaged in extracurricular, has gone through the roof. That's a really positive thing. But I do think that what we're seeing in the impact of this pandemic is the increased inequalities and the impact of those inequalities across nations, but also within nations, is actually, so we know that people who know about universities are engaged with them are very positive. And in fact, the negativity is very heavily involved with those who, for various reasons, and it's often socioeconomic circumstance, are actually outside. And so I think that our position in society is being eroded by the impact of inequality and trust in democracy and institutions. And that's what I would say from what I see in our part of the world.
That's really interesting. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, President.
Oh, yeah. In Korea, it's a little different situation with other countries. I think that is that we have a really big shortage of the vaccine until now. So all the people in our country ask for the university to develop the new vaccines. And then we think again what we should do, what we did. And we did not prepare to develop the vaccine by ourselves. So nowadays, university really concentrate how we can make the platform to develop that kind of the new vaccines and other related with the bio industry. And now we just build to make some consortiums with the bio industry and other universities to develop that kind of the platform. That's our report. Yeah, and if we can cooperate it with more things about that kind of the emergency case, that will be really helpful, I think. Thank you.
Yeah, related to that, as you mentioned that, do you think that after this pandemic, the public's going to expect more from universities?
I think so. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Does everyone else sense that? I mean, I sense that too. That we're all connected to our public, certainly, but that the expectation of what role we play maybe has changed because of the need for understanding science, the need for development of technology, and the recognition that a lot of this personal safety depends on some of the research that's going on in our universities.
Yeah, but the problem is that until actually before the pandemics, our research at the university maybe have a pretty long time to develop something. But at this kind of situations, industry or society wanted to prompt development or very short time development about vaccine and other kind of things. That's our problems and how we can prepare to get the result very short time.
That's good point. Good point. So I'm going to see if there are questions. I don't see questions coming in. I can't see hands raised. Perhaps folks from APRU can help me a little bit identify folks that have raised their hands and they can ask questions. This is oh, now that's better. Unfortunately, I still can't see. Can someone just speak up if they'd like to ask a question? I'm searching through. This is the limitations of virtual meetings, and sometimes you can't get enough pictures on a screen here.
Hello.
Ah, there we go.
I got through. I got through.
You got through with a great map in the back.
Yes, right. Thanks, Gene. Thanks again to the speakers, the panelists, for a wonderful presentation. Lots of fruits of thought, food for thought there. So I have a comment, and then some would like to your comment, your view on this as well. So one of the most important mission of university education, of course, is to develop our young people into contributing members of society. And of course, the pandemic has clearly revealed the need for members of society to collaborate, to work together. So how do universities better prepare our students to be more competent, more informed, more motivated members of society? Do we work on our curriculum? Do we work on our experiential learning? Do we do more immersion activities? What do we do? Would love to hear your comments.
Please, any of the panelists like to respond? President Gardner, can you unmute?
Yeah. Yes, just briefly, I actually think that they get most benefit around these challenges from experiential. We're committed in our new strategic plan to a program across the university. We have about 80,000 students of rich learning experiences, which are focused, one on global immersion and the other on enterprising and resourceful experimentation. And those things put them into unusual groups, but in their curriculum into experiences which drive them to build cultural understanding and competence, to build independent creativity. But I think it's the building of rich learning experiences into the curriculum that we have decided to focus on and make them widespread, so that you are actually forcing the interdisciplinary understanding of the sort of complex, wicked, challenging situations that we're dealing with.
Thank you. Yes.
One other thought is that I love the idea about the experiential. I think all these new incubators that we're putting up in all of our institutions, where they get to go in and make things, build companies, they get help from these amazing faculty, cross-disciplinary. I'm truly blown away with some of the things that come out of that. And some of that takes them all the way from, idea to the market within a matter of months. And I think that really creates a set of skills and a thirst for that entrepreneurial spirit that I think is much stronger than it was even 10 years ago at university. So those are another way to build that deep experience.
In terms of specific actions, there are three examples that I want to cite at NTU. One is starting about 2 years ago, even just before the pandemic, we started a undergraduate requirement for all of our 24,000 undergraduate students that irrespectively of their background, everyone has to go through what we call a minimum set of requirements in digital literacy that looks at digital hygiene, ethics, privacy, confidentiality, intellectual property, real news versus fake news, and humanity and technology, and etc. So that's one. Secondly, this year, the entire undergraduate curriculum starting this month is going to be changed so that students will have much greater opportunity to address that. And the last point I want to make is with respect to things like sustainability, which will be part of that curriculum, we also want to build on our campus-wide initiative, opportunities for students and faculty to participate individually through units and as individuals as well. So those are three specific things where I think that there is a greater opportunity. And the last point I want to make, being an optimist, I think that this was Raki's question about what do we do specifically. I think that history has shown time and time again that when young people in particular have their back to the wall and have to face crisis that's not their own making, they come out of it much more invigorated and determined and much more purposeful. For whether it's a 1918 pandemic or World War I or II, I think this generation will come out ahead much stronger than prior generations, including ours, because they've gone through this. So,
Thank you. So I see I have hands in chat and I have virtual hands I can see. I think the first hand that came up though is President Ho Cheng from Tsinghua University, National Tsinghua University. President Ho Cheng.
Yes, thank you. I got through. Yes, thanks, Jin. I see a lot of hands up, so I will keep my talk short. So we can see that the pandemic really poses a great challenges to us. So forces us to see our physical limit. And we can see also a lot of trials and though a lot of frustrations, but many are successful. So I think we are struggling for the new normal. In the short term, probably the so-called hybrid mode of learning and teaching before reaching probably the online dominant, eventually the mode. And then also we need to prove the value of then the physical campuses to persuade the society why to invest so much on a physical campus. So these are things and challenges we are facing. So I would like to propose a bold proposal. Maybe let me borrow the word or modify the word from Nobel laureate in physics, Richard Feynman. I think there is plenty of room at cyberspace. So I would like to propose to build a cyber university. And the university has a formal name called PRU, Pacific Rim University. And the PRU could be the governing body. I think this PRU will be built upon the successful experiences currently we have seen, both in teaching, lecturing, student activities. Students can learn together and play together and so on, doing research together. And this PRU will be built in the right place because the Pacific Rim or the Pacific will be geographically the center of mass in the future world, and will be built in the right time after the pandemic, and also built by the right people, because APRU includes the strongest university in this region. So I think this is probably the time we think about build a formal cyber university and to integrate all the efforts we have tried and to expand our strengths. After all, building such a university we can achieve bigger than any one of us alone. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that's certainly, if there is a good time for it, this is probably the right time. We now honed our skills at using remote communication, and the world has gotten much smaller. So thank you for your suggestion. I think the next person was, I think President Jacobs. I think you were next on the chat list. Ian Jacobs.
Thank you, Gene. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, first of all, a thank you. It was fascinating to hear the views of all 5 colleagues. And I just want to congratulate you on your achievements during the pandemic and the insights you gave us. So thanks so much for that. Second, a comment. The discussion about the impact of the pandemic on the perception of universities. I think it is absolutely true that many in society have seen even more clearly the importance of the contribution universities can make. But unfortunately, at the same time, the burden of the pandemic has fallen disproportionately on people outside universities and people who don't have the benefit of a university education. And that has led to some real hostility towards our universities. Of course, one of the solutions for that is to spread higher education ever more widely. And of course, that is, I love the idea of the Pacific Rim University, and it could help us to achieve that objective. And that brings me to my question, which relates to extending education and the opportunities for higher education more broadly through online learning. And the idea that I heard that I thought was exciting about sharing campuses. And I'd love to hear more from the panel of their response to that suggestion, because if then those students who are online could have access. So I'd very much enjoy hearing the views of the panel on the possibility of sharing campuses in that context.
Thank you. So some of our panelists would like to comment. Can't. The panelists are lost among you, so I have to just have to trust you'll speak up, right? Again, a lot of faith.
I'll add something quickly. I mean, I do love the idea of a global university and sharing campuses, but I think also within each of our own universities, we've got lots of people, even in our own regions, that are left out. So for me, that's a really big deal. Do I go to downtown LA, where I've got millions of people that have no college education and no access? Where do we put our efforts? I think the truth is we do it both ways, because we want our local, we want to get that global perspective, but we also have a responsibility to our own communities for those who are left behind. Because I think what you said about the way people feel when they get left behind is really important. So if we have easy ways to both share globally while also being able to increase our access and opening our doors locally, I think we'll find solutions that will be sort of music to all of our ears. It's how to do it, I'm not sure, but I sure love to work with people on it.
That makes a lot of sense. You know, we've even talked about our own employees. We have many employees that are lower wage jobs who could use a college education. Here we are, we're an educational institution. You know, why aren't we reaching them? Well, remotely you can reach them, because you have to be flexible on time, and asynchronous education offers you opportunities. So I think you know, Ian, it's everything from the global to the local. We have to be thinking about you know, a bigger, as I say, a big tent for education. So thank you. I should turn now, since we're running out of time. I think the next was, I think President Tanaka, I think was the next, and then I think Sun Yat-sen.
Okay, thank you very much, Gene. Thank you very much. I have a question from a slightly different angle, and probably all of us are facing the challenge posed by this pandemic. One of that is a student asking to reduce our tuition, and some of the students made a lawsuit against the universities. And May 2020, I issued my statement to our students that, you know, we are doing our best, like to try to protect their lives and health. And actually, Waseda University spent so much money to buy the 2,000 license of Zoom, which each license had a capacity, more than capacity of 800 students could access simultaneously. And we changed, upgraded all the air conditioning system of the classrooms, and so that we can circulate the air, you know, and ventilate the virus and so forth. And also we have to keep buying the books. The library has to keep buying the books in 2020 or 2021. Although we had all the campus, sometimes campus are closed, but still we have to keep buying the books, and also we have to subscribe the e-journals and so forth. But students are saying that they are not commuting to the, you know, could not come to campus, and then they don't have the normal student life, and therefore they are asking us to reduce the, you know, tuition. And we have to try to persuade them at best. And how would you handle this problem? And we are facing all the same problem, I guess.
I'd love to hear our panelists comment on that. You know, at the UC system, University of California, we're being sued. I mean, so students say we should return some of their fees, and we are in fact returning some of the fees that we feel are appropriate to return. You know, fees for using recreational equipment and things that they're clearly not using. But we've held the line on tuition, saying that, you know, we still have to pay professors their full salaries, and we still have to pay everyone at the university to maintain an excellent educational environment. So on tuition, we have not returned tuition, but others may have. I'd be interested in hearing what our panelists have been doing.
Yeah, I wanted to share my experience last year. So we had experienced the same, you know, asking from the students. And actually, I have answered that our zero contact hybrid directory is not enough for your expectations. or compared with rest lectures in 2019. I will refund all the tuition and fees without any credit, I said, and nobody asked to refund. But you must think about that. They need more money because they need more money for the mobile phone. So our university decided to pay all the payments for their mobile phones. That's our solution to last year.
Thank you.
It's an unusual circumstance in Australia. We can't shift our tuition fees for domestic students because we're a public university and they are set by the government in legislation. But we did last year refund part of their student contribution to recreational facilities. As you said, Chancellor Block, we did that last year in lockdown because they couldn't get access to them. We put in a very large hardship fund. So our hardship fund was 30 million and we dispersed that principally over international students who are full fee paying. We have not reduced fees of international students who are full fee paying, not on the Australian government funding, but of course they were also subject to A, access to the hardship money, and B, reduction if they were on campus of any of the use of the facilities. But in truth, we know from our financial reports that we can demonstrate that we actually spent more on students per head in 2020 than we did in 2019. And I think that continues into 2021. So yes, we're not planning to shift tuition fees.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's caused many institutions. It's actually been more expensive. So I better, we're running late. So I want to make sure I have Sun Yat-sen University gets a chance to ask a final question. So please, Professor. You have to unmute yourself. We'll have to unmute. Excellent.
Yeah.
Up, you muted again. Good.
Okay. Could you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm very interested in the virtual student exchange program. Maybe as you know, if I think only with all people resonated, then I think we can travel freely or we can meet in person freely. So I am very interested on the virtual student exchange program, just like I think the virtual master degree program or something like that. And then anyone could tell me a little bit more of this virtual student exchange program, or whether the APRU could design some virtual program for our members.
Yeah. So I'm going to turn. I see President Tuan is there. Rocky Tuan, who really designed a program, a virtual student program. So perhaps just a few words would be helpful.
Yeah, sure. The program actually started more than a year ago now. Last June we implemented it. It's all the details are on the APRU website. There are already some 26 universities participating, and about 800 or 900 students taking a whole bunch of courses. I forgot how many. The number of courses keeps going up. So it's all available. And as a member of APRU, your students can participate. There's no money. They basically got the credit all taken care of. So everything is on the website. So I will stop right there. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, thank you, President. The answer is we are new members. We do not know that.
Exactly. Right. So go to APRU, look up VSE, Virtual Student Exchange, and you'll get all the details.
Okay, great.
So I guess we have run out of time. I'll just make a brief comment at the end. So I think many of us have experienced, as you can tell, similar situations, but we've all dealt with them, and I think in different and creative ways. So it's always good to share our experiences. One thing I'd say that I think I've learned from this is that I want to make sure our students, when they graduate, have, I always say, 3 competencies. One is they have to have science competency, even if they're humanities majors, because they've got to sort of understand, at least at a basic understanding of PCR and monoclonal antibodies. To be informed citizens, they actually have to know more science now. And the pandemic has made that very clear. You have to have science literacy. The other is data literacy. You've got to be able to separate what we call snake oil, spurious theories from real data, and be able to appreciate when you read in the newspaper about a result for a vaccine, understand the result. And I'd say third is global competency, is that you can't solve the problem in Los Angeles or Auckland or Jakarta and solve the pandemic. It's a world problem. It's a global problem. And students have to appreciate that they're part of a global community. And that's where APRU comes in, to remind all of us that these are global issues that require global solutions. So I want to thank all of our panelists. If we were in person, we'd all be clapping now, which we can't. But appreciate your participation, and this will be an ongoing. We can show some visual clapping, and I want to thank everyone for participating. And now we don't want to lose everybody, because when you say business meeting, everybody flips to their picture and disappears. This is going to be a pain-free business meeting. This is very short this year, so I think we can keep your attention and move on to an interesting next session. Not that the business meeting isn't interesting. I have to be careful, Chris. It's an interesting business meeting, but I'll turn it over to our CFO, Sherman Chang, actually to lead us through. I think we just have really two issues. Sherman.
Thank you, Chairman Block, and thank you for attending the business sessions of the 2021 APRU's annual president's meeting. There are two agenda items for this year's business session. First, it is the presentation of the financial results for fiscal 2020. The audited financials will be mailed out to the presidents after this meeting. Second, it is the election of the nomination slate for the steering committee. On the slide right now, the financial shows that the audit has been completed in May, and we have received an unqualified opinion, or otherwise known as clean report, from our auditors. The audit covered the full calendar year of 2020. For the fiscal 2020, APRU has 56 members as of December 31st, 2020. And as of today, that has increased to 60. Not only did the membership grow, the non-membership revenue from different funding sources also grew. For example, we have received funding from Google and Elsevier. On the expense side, the staff cost has continued to decrease as percentage of revenue, indicating higher productivity per staff at the Secretariat. Overall, surplus has increased year over year as well. Now, not on this slide, the unaudited 6 months result for the Secretariat continues the trend of positive surpluses. All members, including the new ones, have already paid their 2021 membership fees. Please do not hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions regarding the financials. Next, it is the election of the nomination slate for the steering committee. Now, before we present the nomination slate, the Secretariat would like to express our sincere thanks for the departing members. We thank you for their contribution, and we value their input in shaping a better APRU. As a quick reminder, only presidents or chief executives are members of APRU per our charter. Therefore, only the president's or the chief executive's vote will be counted. Now, the nomination slate is listed on this slide. As per the steering committee rule, the vote is on the full slate, meaning that either the full slate is elected or rejected. Individuals on this slate are not being voted upon separately. Now, if there are no additional questions, please raise your hand if you elect the nomination slate. Now, please keep your hand raised up for a short period. We will now perform a count for the raised hands. Okay, we have now completed counting the yay, and please raise your hand if you reject the nomination slate. Please kindly hold your hand as well for a short period of time. We'll now count the nays. Okay, thank you very much for the voting. Now, for the results and reporting to the chair, I hereby announce that the nomination slate has been elected by the attendees of the general meeting to our steering committee, and the Secretariat extends our warmest welcome for these incoming members. This concludes the business sessions, and the floor back to you, Chairman Block.
Thank you, Mr. Chang. So this was, as I pointed out, this was a painless business meeting. So I appreciate it. And we now have our new leadership in place and our continuing leadership, and we look forward to serving all of you and hopefully continuing to improve this organization. So now, which is a great addition to our program this year, we're gonna have a student forum. It's called Shaping the New Normal. So, we have an opportunity now to hear from students. The pandemic has impacted them in profound ways, clearly. So it's important to hear their perspectives as well as when we talk about the new normal, what it means to them. So I'm delighted to introduce our panel chair to lead the discussion. So Chinese University of Hong Kong Vice Chancellor and President Rocky S. Tuan, who assumed office in 2018. And he's also the Li Kuo-wai and Li Yihui-lun Professor of Tissue Engineering and Regenerative Medicine at the university. So prior to joining CUHK in 2016, he held several appointments at the University of Pittsburgh, including Distinguished Professor of Orthopedic Surgery and Director of the Center for Cellular Molecular Engineering in the School of Medicine. He's an internationally renowned biomedical scientist, has received numerous awards, and is an elected member of the National Academy of Inventors, the Chinese Association of Inventions, the American Association of Anatomists, and the Orthopedic Research Society. So please welcome President Tuan.
Thank you very much, Chancellor Block. And I want to welcome everyone to this inaugural student forum. As we all know, the world is being ravaged by the COVID-19 pandemic, and it's clear that no individual has been spared from the destructive force, directly or indirectly. While many of us here have lived long enough to experience various global crises in the last several decades, I'm sure certainly nothing can compare to the current pandemic. I believe that our young university students have been one of the most hard-hit in disenfranchised groups. COVID-19 has severely perturbed their education program and their plans for the future. Luckily, many of us in APRU have been quick to move teaching online, including develop virtual student exchange activities. But is online teaching and learning as effective as our traditional face-to-face mode? Well, interestingly, in a recent report, the World Economic Forum showed research showing that for those who do have access to the right technology, online learning can actually be more effective in a number of ways. For example, data show that on average, students retain 25 to 60% more material when learning online compared to only 8 to 10% in a classroom setting. So the pandemic has indeed expedited the wide adoption and development of innovative technologies. And this will have a lasting effect on both our curriculum and pedagogical design. Unfortunately, there is a dark side. The pandemic has widened the gap between the haves and have-nots. This is particularly true of the digital divide. Factors such as access to devices, internet connectivity, and the competing use among family members during periods of lockdowns have further exacerbated the socioeconomic gaps between different segments of the society and between countries and continents. Furthermore, in my opinion, the pandemic has truly underscored the importance of the social determinants of health. A prime example is that the lack of face-to-face and frequent interactions with friends and families has induced and aggravated mental health problems. Depression and anxiety are often left unnoticed and untended to. A study published in June this year on the impact of COVID-19 on the mental health of US college students showed that somewhere between 55% and 60% of students near graduation face increases in anxiety, 60.8%, feeling of loneliness, 54.1%, and depression, 59.8%. The closing down of campuses has other consequences as well, including, for example, economic impact because of loss of part-time employment for those who depend on it. Also, loss of practical and experiential learning, and absence of ensemble or group activity, such as sports, artistic performance, etc., etc. These all have taken a toll on our students' physical, mental, and intellectual development. While the pandemic and the concurrent global geopolitical power play have on the one hand forced us to focus on our own well-being, they have also highlighted the urgency of global challenges such as poverty, inequality, and the climate crisis. We must examine how our actions or lack of can impact others. Specifically, I believe the pandemic tsunami has clearly demonstrated the importance of our commitment to global partnership and collaboration, as this has never been more important in building a better world. In other words, a global consortium such as APRU has an even more important role to play. Well, I know this all sounds really gloomy. However, our student panelists today have all found ways to soldier on during this difficult time. We're going to hear from 5 students from across different economies about their experience in the last 18 months. They will tell us how the pandemic has made changes in their life choices, as well as their personal commitment and role in society. We'll hear their perspectives on the redefined global challenges in the post-pandemic world. As the popular proverbial phrase goes, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. We are here to partake of their lemonade, and I'm sure their experience and ideas will give us plenty of food for thought as our institutions continue our mission and exercise our responsibilities in education, research, and service locally, regionally, and globally. So let me now welcome our student panelists to take the stage. I will ask each one of you to introduce yourself and the APRU program in which you have participated. We want to hear from you, your perspectives of the past 18 months, and your vision for the future. Let me start off with Daniela Montalvo Tinajero from the Universidad San Francisco de Quito. Please introduce yourself and share your perspective during the pandemic, how you maintain your positivity and perseverance during the pandemic, and how you have dealt with unexpected circumstances and the unknown future. Daniela, please.
Thank you. Good evening and good morning, Vice Chancellor Tuan and fellow students. Thank you so much for your question. First off, my name is Daniela Montalvo Tinajero. I study at USFQ in Ecuador, and my majors are international relations and political science. I was involved with APRU through the virtual student exchange program held at UC Davis titled Becoming a Global Learner, which was an absolutely amazing experience. The fact that so many students from so many APRU universities were able to come together and find camaraderie just goes on to show how enriching this program was. And the excellent guidance from the leaders of UC Davis helped me gain skills that I have already started applying to both my academic and my personal life, helping me become a more culturally conscientious person. So it was an absolute highlight during the pandemic. Regarding your question, I think that I consider that for every single one of us, the pandemic has been a life-changing experience, and it hasn't been easy to maintain positivity and perseverance, but something that helped me realize that was a mindset that I need to get myself into was the fact that life in and of itself goes beyond us. So during the pandemic, I started volunteering with a local high school, and I discovered the world of creative writing. That was something I had never done before, but I started coaching these high school students through the pandemic. And I think that finding community in each other is what keeps us going and what kept me going and is still keeping me going. So I think that that is definitely something to highlight. And I guess just making sure that we are open to this new world, because right now we're in a changing world and we haven't yet emerged from that new change. So I think that right now we are learning a lot from ourselves and from each other, and precisely programs such as the one that I participated in at UC Davis made me realize that at the end of the day, we're all more similar than we are different. And meeting with other students from different universities in different countries, different time zones, made me realize that we can find that global village in a way, because I still have connection with some of those students and we are all going through the same thing. So just realizing that we're not in it alone is how I found that positivity and perseverance for the pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniela, for sharing that. Now let me invite Vicki Murray of the University of Washington to introduce herself and to tell us about the experiences that have led you to this course of study and to become involved with APRU. Oops. I think you're muted, Vicki.
Does that work better?
Yes. Thanks.
Okay, I changed my microphone, so we should be good to go. Good morning and good evening, everyone. My name is Vicki Murray. I attend the University of Washington in Tacoma. It is a city about 30 minutes south of Seattle. I studied my master's degree in community planning. How I came to APRU was through my master's program, actually. I was introduced to the Asian Pacific Mayors Academy through one of my instructors who is also an instructor within the Mayors Academy. And I assisted the Mayors Academy in facilitating their meetings with the mayors, which included using different digital technologies such as Miro board, Nearpod, Zoom, figuring out how to do translation functions on Zoom, making sure that the whole Mayor's Academy was running on time and flowing smoothly. And because of that experience, I've actually been able to make a pivot in my own career away from education and into international governance and foreign policy work. So I will be soon to be starting a position in sustainability and indigenous development in the Seattle area. So it's really been such an amazing experience for me, and it's really helped develop my career and my passion for sustainable urban development, the environment, and indigenous-led policy.
Well, thank you very much, Vicki. Okay, we'll move on. Now I turn to Sean Hang of the National University of Singapore. Please introduce yourself and tell us about how you see the future as a student who will soon be graduating. What has been your experience during the pandemic, and how will this experience shape your future beyond university life? Sean?
So good day, everyone. I'm Sean from the National University of Singapore, where I'm currently in my penultimate semester reading my master's degree in management. So I was the 13th president of NUS Esports from 2019 to 2021, and it was my privilege in that time to watch the club grow from 42 students to over 700 members. So I like to describe my university journey as that of a protagonist in a video game. I started off my beginnings effectively at level 1, entering NUS by myself with not much experience and very basic skills. And much like any story's heroes, I had my own goals, and my own dreams that I wanted to achieve, which was to mainly build up the esports scene in NUS. So in 2019, I had my first opportunity to interact with the APRU Esports Fellowship Initiatives, I had traveled across the globe for my overseas exchange, and my predecessor had managed to arrange for me to meet up with the esports president from the University of South California. And it was a very eye-opening and rewarding experience for myself. Me and Keanu had conversed about building our campus's esports scene, how to develop local talents to semi-professional standards, and of course, how much we love gaming. It was also very humbling as I realized how far away my own club's progress was, and it lit the fires of determination under me and helped me pave the way that I wanted to develop esports in NUS. And as with any adventure, there is bound to be uncertainty. So many of my plans for my club were smashed asunder really by the unexpected advent of COVID. Plans of physical get-togethers and events were deferred due to safety concerns, and rightfully so. It was a period of much uneasiness, and I can speak from experience that there was a distinct lack of social cohesion at the time. Many of my juniors and peers felt isolated in that period due to the shift to online lessons and limitations in group meetups. And yet, this also presented a unique opportunity for esports, given that it's primarily played via, online platforms. So I sought to pivot my club's operations to provide mental wellness and promote social bonding through online games, working to provide an alternative medium in which a semblance of community interactions could be provided to students. If anything, this pandemic has taught me that it's not enough to simply be resilient, but you also want to be adaptable to new situations in order to find the optimal outcomes. The APRU Esports Fellowship Initiative was also a great boon in these troubled times, offering not just myself, but my fellow student leaders the opportunity to level themselves up by bridging the gaps in knowledge during our monthly workshops. And these workshops are where different universities present unique concepts for the cohort to take home and internalize. And even after having stepped down, I believe that the APRU network offers students a firm foundation to build their experiences upon and to collaborate with other bright global minds to continue their own individual hero's journey. Now, as for myself, I'm still adjusting to finding a job in this new norm of decentralized workplaces, having been a bit too accustomed to working from home. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sean. So now let's move on to Xinyi Duan of Osaka University. Xinyi, please introduce yourself and share your experience as an international student during the pandemic. How have you built community and a network during these very unfamiliar and threatening circumstances? Xinyi, please.
Okay, thank you, Professor Tan. Hello, everyone. It's a great honor to be invited to participate in APRU annual President Meeting Student Forum. My name is Xinyi Duan. I come from China, and I'm now a second-year graduate student majoring in public health at Osaka University in Japan. My lab and myself research are focused on the epidemiological study about prevention and management of non-communicable disease. As we all know, the pandemic is bound to affect everyone's lifestyle and habits such as smoking, diet, physical activities, and these are the major risk factors for various non-communicable disease. We are now very interested to know whether the changes in everyone's habits during the pandemic may have had an impact on the prevention of some communicable disease. In terms of my life, I have never been away from home for so long before I came to Japan. Living and studying abroad during the pandemic will always make me feel lonely and anxious. Also, because all the courses are online, I sometimes worry about my research and study. In these difficult circumstances, I try to find something new that interests me and join some online activities to interact with others as much as possible. Participating in APRU Global Health Program was the important step I took. I have been interested in global health since I was an undergraduate, but have never participated in the related program. I'm very happy to finally be involved in this program and have gained much more from it. Then I continue with a mini certificate in health research ethics in April of this year. I would like to thank you, Dr. Melissa Winsers, the director of this program, and the other faculty members of the participating university for organizing this course so perfectly that we students can keep interest in every global health topics and always have the courage to share our insights throughout 2 months long course. Through my involvement in APRU activities, I also become more aware of the difficulties and the positive significance of conducting public health research in the post-pandemic world. This will inspire me in my research and career in the post-pandemic future. Finally, I would thank to the Global Health Program faculty and APRU for such a wonderful experience. Although I will graduate in less than a year, I still hope to have the opportunity to participate in APRU activities afterwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Xinyi. So our last panelist is Robbie Anderson of the University of Auckland. So Robbie, please introduce yourself and share your experience serving as a resident advisor at the university. What was it like to serve your peers during the pandemic? What experience have you heard from your fellow students? What challenges are they facing? What are they worried about? What are their and your hopes for the future? Robbie?
Kia ora, I'm Robbie Anderson, and I'm a third-year architecture student at the University of Auckland in New Zealand. I mean, as well as I think the key thing is that everyone was going through the pandemic together, but we also had lots of individual things. So, like for starters, the API program I was involved with was Solve Climate by 2030, which meant I was a panelist at one of the discussions along with other experts from our university. But I also got to interact and get an insight into the viewpoint of other students who are involved in the APRU program all across the world. And while everyone had different experiences, there was one shared goal of solving climate. And we were able to see how we can make a global change through regional perseverance. But I'm also an architecture student, and I'm passionate about design and the urban fabric of our cities. But I also work in the climate advocacy space, working with government organizations and educating all our peers. And I'm really looking forward to connecting this forward with my master's in architecture. But in addition to this, I was also a resident advisor with first-year students through the pandemic. This was, working the front lines and really working through, changing status every day, every week. And it was interesting to work in an organization where we almost didn't know what our job was when we woke up in the morning and had to have discussion with our managers and really push through. And while there were many scenarios where we could have become really fed up and had a hard time and it was affecting us personally, we were also looking after 400 students who they're in their first semester of university ever in their life. And while lockdown really was inhibiting them and online studies wasn't great, we also had to remember that these are people like you and me, and they're really affected by everything else going on in their life. They've all got relationships, they might not be doing as well in class as they would like. Their friendships might have taken a bit of a turn. They might not be enjoying what they're eating, and everything else is still going on.
Yeah.
So it was really great to see that, while there was this shared perspective of, being affected by online learning, every student is still incredibly different. And I was really privileged to meet all of them last year. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Robbie. Well, thanks, Daniela, Vicky, Sean, Xinyi, and Robbie for introducing yourself and giving us some background of who you are, what you do, and how you feel, and so forth. So let me now go to each of you and ask a couple of simple questions, and then later on we'll of course have the audience chime in as well. So let me start with Daniela first. You talked very passionately about your community engagement effort. So having done that, what recommendation would you give other students on developing a sense of a sort of a co-ownership of the future? You use the word global village, which I like a lot. And I think we are really seeing the realization of this whole concept. The world is not as independent as we all like to see, meaning each part actually depends on other parts. And each person depends on other people. So this co-ownership concept, what kind of advice would you give? And also, there's going to be many hardships coming along. Some of them never been seen before. How would you deal with these from a emotional, mental level? So your comments, Daniela.
Okay, thank you so much, Vice Chancellor Tuan. Well, I think that uncertainty is a part of life. It's something that we will never be able to get rid of. However, I firmly believe that we can all take initiative to make a more conscious decision to be more in tune with our environment and our community. And I think that that is the way through which, as students and as people in general, we can try to take ownership of that future, because again, that uncertainty will be there, but we can take actions that will get us closer to a future that we are building. So regarding hardships, that's true. I mean, I think that, as I mentioned earlier, we are in a world that is still changing and we have not yet emerged into this new world. So definitely the hardships that we will face will be unprecedented and have been unprecedented. So I think that regarding that, open and empathetic dialogue is the key for this. And authenticity as well is key. Because if we are in tune, if we are open, if we are more empathetic with each other, we start breaking down those differences and really connecting and finding solutions that we need as a community, rather than, oh, what do I need? But we have to start thinking, what do we need as a whole? And I think that ties in into the idea of a global village, as you mentioned, because I think that, again, like, we're much more connected than we think. So we just need to be open to talk about it more. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Daniela. So let me now turn to Vicky. What is your vision for yourself and your community? How does your work at the University of Washington and APRU prepare you for their future? I am particularly aware of what you mentioned about factors such as inequality and so forth. You, of course, have firsthand experience from your activities. So would love to hear your comment.
Absolutely. One of my key areas of interest is post-colonial recovery. And I am fascinated by not only the traumas and the history behind colonization and what that's done to people, the environment, but I'm also interested in how we can use models from around the world for recovery. And so one of the things that I really took away from the Asian Pacific Mayors Academy was seeing how all of these nations who are rebounding from having long histories of colonization are creating these strategies that really meet their cultural needs and the needs of the landscape in which they reside in. And one of my long-term goals is to do my PhD and really study these strategies and create kind of a guidebook and share that out with the world on how are we going to rebound. And you know, this is only further exacerbated by public health crises that we're facing right now. And so being able to be resilient and being able to rebound from these major crises is something that fascinates me. And I think that things like this forum, where we can get together as a global audience and really learn from each other, sit down and take in the knowledge and share it out with each other, is really going to make the world a much better place. So applying that to my own community, I intend to, you know, take this work and bring it back to my community. I'm already working with a couple of nonprofit organizations and developing a nonprofit with my own family to try and meet some of these needs locally as well as globally. I don't think we can hear you, sir.
Okay, sorry. I had some internet issue, so I lost a little bit of the previous dialogue, but I will come back and figure this out later. Okay, so let's move to Sean. Sean, you mentioned you gave us some very exciting personal view of the esports activity and this esports community, which one day I promised myself I will try to dip my toe in there. But right now I am talking as an totally uninformed person. But anyway, I sense your level of enthusiasm. So how has your engagement in esports prepare you for your future in esports as well as other careers? Now you mentioned protagonists and all this kind of stuff. Sounded really, really cool. But how does that prepare you for the future? And how do you and your fellow students see the current state of the job market in your field of interest and expertise? You mentioned a little bit about looking for jobs and so forth. So I just want to get a sense of your, I don't want to probe your level of anxiety, but I would like to just get a little bit of how you feel about this.
Thank you for your question, Vice Chancellor Tuan. So, I mean, to me, when I first entered esports, really, it kind of opened my eyes to the industry that, much like any other industry, you think of finance, IT, the banking sector, it has an entire corporate side to esports itself. It's not just playing computer games or being a pro gamer, so to speak, right? So for myself, I actually furthered my interest in esports by seeking out professional development esports programs and courses. So of my own volition, I took up the Sports Singapore coaching course, and that certified me actually as a national coach. And then I used what I learned to shape the esports doctrine for my club in terms of developing the esports program for selecting and training esports athletes for NUS. And then this certification also actually qualifies me to conduct training workshops in public schools where I educate youths about mental wellness through esports. And then I also voluntarily took up additional responsibilities beyond my club, networking with the other presidents from the esports clubs from various universities to build up the varsity esports team together. And this was actually the motivation for why I joined the Singapore Esports Association as one of their board members. So in terms of my experiences, I would say that it builds upon one another. I actively seek out opportunities to improve myself, to explore more of the industry. In my internship experience also I recently took out a digital marketing internship to find out how to digitally market the esports industry. And it was also very rewarding then. As for your second question about what my fellow students and their career paths, I would think that right now, the esports scene in Singapore is still shaking up, still very nascent. There isn't a very defined career path, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. So having spoken to the national associations here, esports jobs right now tend towards more of the game development or the marketing route. And anecdotally, I do think that the NUS School of Computing has prepared the students well, because quite a few of my friends went on to be hired based on their programming and coding game development skills. Yeah. And off the beaten track, rather, there is more interest from students about shoutcasting, which is basically sports commentary for esports and live streaming. And students are actually going out for workshops or just trying their hands at amateur productions, really trying to understand how to get into the space themselves. And on my own, I do encourage this. I do try to organize workshops for them also. And it's very enheartening to see them go forward and pursue their own hobbies and try to translate that to a professional career. Yeah, for myself, actually, I would like to see more emphasis placed on organizational development and talent management within the esports sector, because that is my main area of specialization. But time will tell. So yeah, there is that. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Sean. So let me turn to Xin Yi. So you participated in the APRU Global Health Leadership course. So you have this particular experience. How do you think this experience has shaped your thinking about healthcare? What is needed now and beyond the pandemic? As you know, in the last 10 years, been a lot of talk about personalized medicine, precision medicine, et cetera, et cetera. It's kind of narrowing it down to a person. But this pandemic now has taught us, look, it's not just one person who's sick. There's a lot of people who are sick, and they are all having the same illness. So you study public health. This is exactly what it's about. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Okay, thank you, Professor Don. Actually, because before I came to Osaka University, Japan, I studied medical English in China and went to Europe and Australia as exchange student. So I had a lot of opportunities to learn about other countries' social development, culture, and the local healthcare system. So I always look at health care from an international and the social perspective. Social environment can affect our health behaviors and ultimately our well-being. So I always think one thing is true, that health is a property of society. And the COVID-19 pandemic make us think about the global challenge in healthcare, and the pandemic exposed the scales of various social inequalities. For this, I hope that in the post-pandemic future, international cooperation and communication about healthcare, about the public health, we will return to normal and become more and more. And I think as an international student, I have a willingness and responsibility to expand my horizons and use my experience to understand the problem faced by different countries. And I know one thing I learned from this, the COVID-19 pandemic, is that the international cooperation and the World Organization about Health is very, very important for each of us. And I hope more and more countries and students and experts in public health and global health can join more international cooperation held by the UN or the WHO. So that's all. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Xinyi. So finally, Robbie, you talked very eloquently about the climate crisis that the world faces. And I think this year in particular, with many of the heat waves, flooding, not to mention the natural disasters such as the coronavirus, which I would say at some point we'll figure out that actually has something to do with climate changes. But at any rate, having done all of that, with your experience working with various organizations such as Generation Zero, and given the insights that you just presented, what kind of initiatives can students, all right, who are not the top 1% of the world, future maybe, but not at this moment, how do students, what kind of initiatives should students take to solve problems, global problems, such as climate change? And what do you think are the barriers to some extent, the forces that are standing in the way for young people, young students to take charge in dealing with the global climate crisis? Love to hear your thoughts.
So that's the biggest problem we face. You know, when trying to make a change, especially with governments, there's often an expectation of, you know, having necessary expertise in the field, and, you know, having worked in government organizations for years and years, and kind of logging in the background, building up that necessary portfolio, whatever. Whereas, you know, which maybe now is in the past, but it's still a barrier to many people. But with working with organizations like Generation Zero, there's a space to self-develop and really develop that expertise with your peers who have been in the organization for a few more years. And so they can help to educate those who are new to the space, and really build it up. And so you can learn in that environment. And the other thing is there's no one else talking about these issues. So there's almost this void which has to be filled. And I think students have that space where they're passionate and they're learning, you know, they're getting that expertise, and they can really speak up for themselves and make that change. And so, for example, Generation Zero works on a range of scales, from city councils to discussions with Parliament and our Prime Minister, and really work on a national scale. And, you know, we can actually make meaningful change. And we've worked in the past. We started at an international climate conference, brought it back to New Zealand, and created the Zero Carbon Act, which is now legislation which affects how New Zealand is going forward. But it's really interesting because we have a combination of students from law, sciences, the arts, business, and even architecture. But we all kind of come together using our strengths to really make meaningful change, which often happens in the background where, you know, we're working with ministers and the people who are doing that work. But it's also about reaching out to communities and making sure that they're involved, so that we, you know, we're not just pushing ahead and solving climate for the select few, but making sure there's real climate justice, to help all our communities and the rest of the world. And I think that's really, I think just even tying back to that Solve Climate by 2030 program, it really helped to see that while this is all happening across the world, that is actually how we solve this global issue. Yeah.
So thanks, Robbie, for sharing that. To me, I think the climate problem or the crisis is not just a jigsaw puzzle. It's not like already pre-cut, and all you have to do is find the pieces. We have to improvise, and improvisation requires creativity, cooperativity, and passion. So I thank you very much for sharing your thoughts. Okay, so now I want to again thank our 5 panelists for a very personal and in-depth sharing of their thoughts. Now, I would like to ask the audience to send in your comments, your questions, your words of wisdom, or words of doubt, whatever it is, because we are looking at our future generation. This is the generation that's going to take us to the next level, take the world to the next level. So please, let's see, how do I do this? Do I look for hands, or how does that work? Jean, how did you do it before? Let's see. Or someone gonna give me
a. So go back to full screen, go back to gallery so you can see as many people as possible.
Okay.
And I think APRU folks will get, actually in the chat, will see hands and let you know who the hands are.
Okay, all right. Okay, I see one chat. Let's see, visual hands raised. Let's see. Someone needs to tell me. I am looking at a lot of boxes. Maybe no one is asking questions. That's the other possibility. That's okay. I will continue this dialogue because I really enjoyed what we have just discussed. I think one of the things that certainly this I call it a tsunami, the pandemic tsunami has done is that it reveals to us where the leaks are in our roof. When it's sunny, we don't really care whether the roof leaks or not because we don't know. But I think with this downpour coming in, and someone actually made a comparison before, saying the vaccine is just like a very thin raincoat. It works if there's just a shower, but if it's a downpour, the raincoat doesn't work. And so we're facing some serious challenges. Now, the 5 of you working on totally different areas from different parts of the world. Let me ask you this, and I'm brutally honest here. What is your level of confidence on the world at this moment? If I were to ask you, give a 0 to 100, where does the world, how does the world rate at this moment? In this very moment, okay, it could change tomorrow, of course, because because our job as university presidents is that we need to prepare the next generation. So we need to know how confident you are in what the world is going to be, so that we can better adjust our activities. So any of you, Daniela, Vicky, Sean, Xinyi, and Robbie, any of you?
Yep. So I think one, parallel we can make is, when we look at the COVID response and everyone's immediately gone to an emergency focus and looking at how they can save their own country, and it's all gone very internal, looking at what suits them the best. But we really need to look at the fact that there are 3rd world countries across the world who are maybe being affected more than others and are by far delayed along that response line. And so maybe we look in the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years and say, okay, when we are combating climate change, this really needs to be a global solution to make sure that we're not leaving anyone behind and pushing through together and still creating this global community. And the great thing is we know it's coming, we can work through it together. And I think it's really making sure that as we come out of this COVID vaccine, as we're vaccinating everyone, we really need to build back our communities better. And so while that might be on a national scale, across the whole world, or even just in universities, using this chance to really make a big difference and reduce emissions.
Yeah, thanks. I think you pointed out one thing that perhaps other students can address as well, and that is the inequity or the inequality across the world. All of you and many other students are going to march out of your own country into other parts of the world in your career, in your life. And so how do we deal with this inequality? I see Vicky's hand up. Vicky?
Yes, I work with Indigenous populations nearly exclusively. And so what I have seen here in the Pacific Northwest of the United States is both, cautious optimism and a new generation that is very fired up and really ready to take charge, as well as, kind of the ghosts of past and trauma and historical inequities that are holding back current generations. And so one of the things that we've been dealing with, I've actually worked at an educational institution for a tribe here in Washington State, and we've been dealing with just meeting basic needs at this point, making sure our students are fed, housed, making sure that they have access to internet in order to attend classes, making sure that they have access to the technology in order to attend classes. These people really can't be successful until they've had just their basic needs met. And I know that there's a lot of strength and resilience in these communities, and there's a lot of drive in order to do better and improve. And so I'm cautiously optimistic, with the caveat that there are massive differences between the community in which I work and the community 10 minutes down the road, in which one is an Indigenous community and one is a primarily white middle-class community. And so if we can bridge the gap between those two and really kind of make the resources and the access match along all lines, then I would be very optimistic.
Thanks, Vicky. Let me see, in the order of hand raising, Daniela, you're next.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor. I would like to highlight what Vicky has just mentioned about cautious optimism, because I resonate with me and my experience, because I think that as young people, or generally students, we're very excited about the world. We're starting in our careers, we're excited about new opportunities. So I think that confidence is there, but we need the support from everyone to be able to achieve our goals. I think that the pandemic has taken a really big toll on students, teachers, and just people everywhere. And I think that addressing those needs is really important, like access to internet resources, all of that is something that is crucial for students to be able to succeed in this changing world. And I think that throughout this pandemic, as students, we have had to kind of put ourselves out there more than we had to before the pandemic happened, because to be able to maintain that level of engagement, it was hard. So for example, as a personal experience, I really wanted to get into the virtual student exchange program when my university announced it. Unfortunately, when I applied over the summer of 2020, I did not get in. So I was really sad when I got those news, but I decided to keep going and try again. So that is when I got in January, when there was more availability for students to apply and just more spots in general. So I think that again, like as students, we have had to deal with these ups and downs of the pandemic, having to deal with rejection, and sometimes having like the feeling that we're not accomplishing as much because our dreams got like stunted because of the pandemic. But I think that again, like with the right community support, we as students were able to keep going. I think that the student panelists here are really amazing. I have been inspired hearing about all of their experiences. So I think that that communication between what students need and what the authorities want needs to like happen. So there is, again, more open and empathetic dialogue so we can better our experience as a whole.
Well, thank you very much, Daniela. I believe the next person is Sean, and then followed by Xinyi.
So actually, I would like to touch upon something that Vice Chancellor Tuan touched upon, actually what other panelists have shared upon, is that I'll bet I am also cautiously optimistic like everyone else. But at the same time, it stems from the reasoning that I believe that my generation is probably one of the more resilient and more adaptable one. Kids these days are born figuratively with a phone in their hand and they just instinctively know how to use it. So we can tell how mentally agile they are nowadays. But also because, like for myself, I'm only 25, but I've been through essentially 3 pandemics, right? There was SARS, there was H1N1, and now there's COVID. And through it all, you watch the world evolve, adapt, and a new norm constantly emerges. And time again, the generation just matches the new norm, right? But the only thing that's really withholding me from being like fully optimistic, it's the fact that we are young, we are youth, we have ideas, we have suggestions, we have enthusiasm. But the people making the policy changes, the people in power, so to speak, aren't us, they are the older generations. And unless our voices is heard, unless there's a common understanding between both sides, change doesn't really happen. Yeah, so that's kind of what's withholding my optimism. Yeah.
All right, great. Okay, Xinyi.
I want to say, actually, as a student majoring in epidemiology, we are very interested about how the people's lifestyle change during the pandemic, because it's 100% happens, the changes happens. But unfortunately, during the pandemic, we can't collect our participants' latest lifestyle data in time, so that we can't conduct or prepare our research and data analysis very quickly. But recently, research shows that the pandemic has affected actually all about lifestyle, such as maybe the drinking, alcohol frequency, smoking frequency, mental health. This is all our interesting point. So, but luckily, as we know, my lab, our checkup for our participants in Japan will restart in this winter, maybe the November and December. And it's very exciting news for us. We can collect the data finally. And I think if I score the pandemics from the medical perspective, I think maybe only the 70, 80. But I think as a public health student, our duty, our research is to find the changes and to analyze this and to tell people how we can, for our self-health, how we can be suitable for adopt for this new normal and care about our own health and our own well-being. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Xinyu. So Robbie, I'll leave the last comment to you.
Yeah, I think it's just important to remember while we are going forward and hopefully getting back to normal, it's important to remember that through this period, there have been people faced with tremendous inequality. We've looked at people who, you know, as a resident advisor, I was talking to students who they loved online learning. They were able to excel. They had more time to plan around their studies. They were like, yes, I can watch all my lectures at double the speed, and they're really efficient. And for those really good students, we saw that their grades weren't affected. But then for other students, there were so many other things going on in their lives. They may have been in households with domestic abuse, access to no Wi-Fi, access to no devices, you know, really unsure how they can go forward, and in a perspective where they just lose that choice. And so luckily we were able to take some students into our accommodation, but it's also looking at how, while we may be continuing on, the last 2 years have been, you know, tremendously different and difficult for some, whereas others have had the opportunity to excel and only focus on their classes. But I think even with them, while they may have excelled and got those great marks, it's also looking at the fact that they may be facing burnout after a period of 2 years of just dedication to study and no space to develop themselves and really expand their worldview, which I think is a great place for APRU to come in and really say, okay, let's create a global community again. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much to our student panelists, Daniela, Vicky, Sean, Shinyi, and Robbie, for such an in-depth sharing. I'll just summarize some of my kind of take-home lesson from having heard your presentations. I think the concept of a global village is very true. The world is actually getting smaller and smaller, even though the problems tend to get bigger and bigger, but actually we are all villagers. Villagers, I think the village operates because everyone knows his or her neighbor, and also extends help and care for their neighbors. So I do believe that should be the sort of underlying operating procedure, if you want to call it, okay, for a global village. So Daniela, you talked about a community spirit. And I think at the end of the day, what we are dealing here with is a human crisis that we need to overcome. So the response, therefore, has to be a human-based response. So I think in terms of a community spirit, we need to feel. We really need to not just talk, we need to feel. We need to feel what our neighbors, what our community members are undergoing, their challenges and so forth. Vicky, I would summarize what you said before as having to be compassionate. And not only do we feel deep down, and then we respond. And then for Sean, I think my summary would be that we need to be also very smart. We need to be resourceful. We need to be adaptable. Don't just feel and then feel sorrow or joy or whatever, but also you need to do something. So doing something means that we got to be smart, and we need to have the knowledge and the skill set. And then Shinyi, I think I would summarize what you said as the spirit to cooperate, to really work together, to not say, well, I'm number one, you're not, and so on. No, we're all in this together. We're in the same boat. So the spirit of cooperation. And then I think for Robbie, since you work with, again, students who are facing the big challenge, I think the most important requirement there is trust. That you actually not only just work together, but you also trust that the other people will be looking out for you. And then whatever you know, you inform your community. So that's my take-home message from what you have just spoken. So I think my time is, in fact, exactly up, right? Otherwise, I would have gotten a big red balloon showing up somewhere. So so this is the end of this particular student forum, which I believe is really exciting because we are hearing from quote unquote our users. So I think APRU as an organization and each of us as leaders of a university we need to take note, and because we serve our students first and foremost. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And Vice Chancellor Chuan, thank you for leading this great discussion, and thanks to all the students. As always, we always learn a lot, and we deeply appreciate you putting in the effort to be here with us. So before we close today's meeting, I'd like to invite the host of the 2022 Annual President's Meeting, President and Vice Chancellor Zhang from the University of Hong Kong, to say a few words. Remember, that's our next meeting, and we were all, of course, hoping that meeting will be in person. That's the plan. So, President Zhang.
Thank you, Jing. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you again over the internet. As you know, that the annual president meeting 2022 will take place next year at the University of Hong Kong to discuss the globally important topics for higher education. The COVID situation currently in Hong Kong is pretty well controlled. However, we don't know what happened next 10 months. But we're determined to planning for a face-to-face meeting next June. Meanwhile, Hong Kong U will celebrate our 111th anniversaries next year. That's 111 year. There will be a series of events planned at that time. The annual president's meeting will be one of the most important one, along with many other activities that will happen right here at the Hong Kong U campus. To share with you our pride and joy, we hope you can join us for some of the festivities. Your time, I hope to see you all in June next year in Hong Kong.
Thank you, President Chang. And we all want to be in Hong Kong, so we're all looking forward to this, and we're confident that we'll be in person. So appreciate it and look forward to the meeting. So I want to thank everyone for joining us. I appreciate everyone's partnership in helping us get through this challenging year as an organization. But I want you to tell you, you can always revisit sessions on the Annual President's platform, so meeting platform. So this is a meeting you can go back and look at parts of it, and if you've missed part of it tonight, you'll be able to see it. So it'll be available, I think, until the first week of September. So that's a resource for you. So look forward to seeing all of you next year in Hong Kong in June of 2022. Please stay safe. Again, thank you for attending, and take care.